The thing I'd first say to that woman is stop comparing yourself to other people and compare yourself only to the person you were yesterday. And how are you going to improve that today?
Hi there, I'm Bex Craig and you're listening to the Not Just Anything podcast for women who want it whole. I hope you'll join me each week as we hear extraordinary stories from women around the world about how they've curated a whole life by design rather than by default. Today I'm speaking to the highly successful Australian serial entrepreneur Jo Burston. Jo is the founder and CEO of Inspiring Rare Birds, the founder and MD of Job Capital, and the co-founder of Startup.Business. She's written several books, is a member of the Young Presidents Organisation, and also its Oceana Global Impact Regional Award honoree. What I really loved about a conversation with Jo was her unwavering confidence and can-do approach, her belief in knowing what matters to you and who you want to become, her conviction in wanting to build a legacy focused on impact, and her genuinely palpable passion for entrepreneurship and gender equity. You'll probably want to grab a notebook for this conversation as there are so many amazing insights and ideas to capture along the way. Here we go. A big warm welcome to Jo Burston, who's joining me on the podcast today from Australia. Welcome. How are you?
I'm wonderful today. Beck, how are you doing over there in Singapore?
I'm very well, and I have been buzzing, looking forward to our conversation. So even better as a result. So I have been learning about your story, seen your amazing impacts, all the different businesses that you're running, in particular what you're up to at the moment with Inspiring Rare Birds. And so I'm so anxious to just hear your story and learn about how you've gotten to where you are. So would you mind if we just jump in with you sharing a bit about your story of how you've got to where you are today?
Sure. Well, I'm on the verge of 50 next year. So it's a lot of years to pack into a few minutes, but I'll start a little bit with my background. You know, I grew up in a place called Revesby Heights to working class parents. And my mum was a bank teller and my father was a fireman. So really important people in community. But at the same time, I think jobs that were typical of those genders as well. You know, there was no female fireys then and there was not many male bank tellers. So if you look at it, you know, from that perspective. But I had a really great childhood and I eventually left high school. I didn't go to university because I didn't know what I wanted to do. At that point in my life, I had no idea the direction I was going to take, which I think is really common. I had to get a job. Basically, mum and dad said, get a job, and went through the newspapers, the local paper, and found a job at a travel agent, and then went to go for the interview, got the job, and then the agency closed the doors. So I then went to get a job at Ansett and had an interview with them, and then they didn't happen. I was thinking about the travel industry, but really not being able to land anything, and I ended up just getting a job, and I worked in retail. I cut my teeth in sales and management in retail, and I worked in a bridal shop, a bridal boutique, and I absolutely hated it. You know, fitting wedding dresses, sewing bridesmaid dresses, making headpieces. Then I took off overseas for a while and went away for a couple of years exploring like most Australians and New Zealanders do, and really that's where I found how amazing and how big the world was and how resilient I was and traveling with no money and getting from one place to another. Then I came back to Australia and thought, well, I need to get serious about a career now. And I think by this stage I was about 27. And so this is late starting a career for anyone. And so I took myself into the city. I was walking around, going for interviews. And I had an interview with a lady basically in the lift of a building. And she said, well, I've got a position available in my company. Why don't you come and interview with me? So this is one of those sliding door moments that you never really know that's going to happen. And I ended up working for the company for 5 years. I started off on the bottom floor of sales. I became state manager, I became national sales manager, and then I became the managing director of the business when she left the organisation to start her own company. So I was earmarked for that position, but I learnt a lot in that 5 year period. And I think my thirst for learning and my understanding of business came quite naturally. And of course, I'm very good with numbers as well. So I wasn't great at maths at school, but I'm very, very good with numbers. So I can see business from a numbers perspective really, really quickly and clearly. So I worked for them for 5 years, managing director of the business. It's about an $80 million company. I was 32, and I flew to Melbourne to meet a prospective client that one of the offshore directors of the business I was working for asked me to meet after he met him on a intrepid luxury cruise in the Antarctic. So this is how all these dots just join in the most amazing ways. And so the director of the company I was working with, who was my boss, said, you've got to go to Melbourne, meet with this guy. So I flew down to Melbourne, and my plane was late. I called his EA and said, look, I'm going to miss the appointment. She said, basically, bad luck, that time slot's gone. I said, look, I'm in Melbourne here now for 24 hours, so anytime he can be available day or night, I'll make my point to come and visit him and have that meeting. She called me that afternoon and she said he's got some time. And I think it was like 4:00 in that afternoon. So I raced back to his office, and later on I found out that I got that time because I was so polite to the EA, which is a great lesson. Be nice to the gatekeepers. And so I walked into his office, and it was a very large office with a big mahogany table. So he walks out, white T-shirt, pair of jeans, pair of runners, and just a very positive vibe from him. And so he said to me, Jo, take a seat anywhere you want. I did the weirdest thing, and, this is another sliding doors moment, part of my story, but I walked around to his side of the table and I sat in his chair. And it was really bold. It could have gone the wrong way really easily, but he laughed. He really laughed his head off, and he said, who the hell are you, basically? And we just started laughing. So the whole meeting launched with this different vibe that is not corporate at all. He is a serial entrepreneur. So I'm like, okay, sat down, had a conversation, spooked about the business. And he goes, well, Jo, if you weren't doing that, what else would you be doing? Because, you back yourself. And I said, well, I'd actually run my own company if I could. And I told him about a business model, how it would make money, what I would need to set it up. And 6 weeks later, he became my first investor. He became my business partner. He became my mentor now of 16 years. And he nurtured me into the world of entrepreneurship. And it's something that I've learned. It's not something I don't believe it's in the person. I think you learn it. I think you learn by doing it, which is a really interesting concept. I'm on this journey of entrepreneurship with a role model, a mentor, and someone who's had proven success. I had everything in my corner to succeed. And he invested about $200,000 into the startup of Job Capital, which is now 16 years old and still doing very, very well. And I was lucky enough, sitting on my floor at home in Wahroonga many years ago with a laptop, I called one of my friends who was working at Qantas, and I said, look, I need some work. I'm a salary packaging business. We do visas. Sure enough, he gave me a piece of work, and that was a $500,000 contract. That was the first piece of work I ever did for that company. So we were kind of off straight away. And within 5 years, the business was a $40 million business. And by that stage, I only had 12 employees. And about 3 years, 3 years into the business, I bought my investor out. So I became the 100% owner of the company. So then I'm into the business by 2012, I think. Things are going great. I'm standing on stage in Parliament House in New South Wales, and I've been awarded the PC Foundation Award, which is a recognition of my contribution to technology and community and the impact I have mid-career. I'm standing on stage, accepting this award, looking at the sea of faces of academics and important government people and industry, captains of industry, and there was just so few women in the room. And I thought, where are all the women? Because this is a technology award, it's an entrepreneur award, and it's a community-based award, and there should be more women in this room. So I thought, well, let's find out where they are. And I went off to my old primary school, Reesby South Public School, and my high school, Picnic Point High School in southwest Sydney. With the permission of the Department of Education, I took with me a film crew. And the objective was to talk to young girls and women between the ages of 8 and 17 and understand who they wanted to become as they grew and what they knew about entrepreneurship and what they knew about business. And I always say to parents, don't ask kids what they want to be when they grow up. Ask them who they want to become as they grow up, because the passion inside someone starts to determine their career path, not the other way around. So I asked them about entrepreneurship, and this is the part that really changed my journey again. And when I asked them what an entrepreneur was, most of them didn't know. The ones that did know said to me, it's a man that runs a business. All my pennies dropped right then. I thought, okay, here's my own natural environment telling me the answer to the question I was asking myself on that stage. And that was that you can't be what you can't see. These girls are speaking reflectively of their own societal and social norms. And it was in that moment there, I'm like, I'm going to change this. I'm going to do something about this, because I want those young women to see that entrepreneurship is a valid career path, and being a businesswoman is also a valid career path. So off I went and thought, okay, how do I go about this? I had to create role models. And we know, the typical saying is girls become school teachers and men become little boys become firemen, because that's what they see. That's the role models that they see in the media and around them in their own environment. So that if I can create role models, I can put women on a pedestal and illuminate their stories and share their stories, that surely is going to inspire other young women to travel that pathway. It would have been about 16. I published Australia's 50 Influential Women Entrepreneurs. Now, Beck, I had no business publishing a book. I'm a terrible writer. I can hardly spell. But I knew that doing it this way, it would be a legacy piece that I could give to someone and they're not going to throw it away. I was really fortunate enough to have the support of EY in Sydney, Lynn Krause and Chani Johnson, who's the Asia Pac CEO. They got behind me and funded me with enough money to roll out 3 publications, which is what I pitched into them. So all of a sudden, with this launch of this book, roadshow across Australia in all EY offices, so moving into new networks and new markets, that book ended up everywhere. It was on in the Prime Minister's office, it was in state ministers' offices, it was in academic. I used to get phone calls every day from people saying, oh, can you introduce me to this woman that's in your book? Or the press would call me and say, we want to do a story on this woman that's in that book. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, I've got this recipe right. I've made these women role models and people are noticing them and people are watching and looking at the stories of very ordinary people doing extraordinary things. So that fueled me to write a second book, which is called #If She Can, I Can. And that's the story of 29 Gen Y women entrepreneurs running 27 businesses. And that's also a playbook. I'll go into the story of Dr. Richard Seymour in a minute, but I got his help to form this book in a certain pedagogy of learning so that when you read it, you read about Mel Perkins at Canva, not just her story, her nice story, but how she started this business, what she did. And then it's like a playbook. You write in there what you would do in your own business. So it's a real piece of education. And then I wrote Brilliant Business Kids, which is the story of 12 kids from all over the world in a cartoon format who are entrepreneurs. And so the reason they all sort of knit together is after writing the first book, I also built a mentoring program, which is hugely successful today. And that's obviously through Rare Birds. And that mentoring program was designed because of the influence and the leg up and the support that I got through my mentor and my original investor and business partner for so many years. And he's still my mentor today, which is extraordinary. But I knew that having that person in my corner was the difference between sometimes succeeding and failing. And I can attribute it to where I am today, other than all my own hard work and mistake making that you do along the journey as well. And so during the journey of Rare Birds, I met a pretty remarkable man called Dr. Richard Seymour, and he was senior lecturer and head of entrepreneurship innovation at the University of Sydney Business School. We had a conversation about some of the work that he had been doing in Southeast Asia under some DFAT funding. And he'd written a pedagogy of learning for grassroots women entrepreneurs starting out and helping them build sort of market stall businesses, small businesses. So over the course of 10 years, he had about 20,000 women go through that program. And that was in Myanmar, which is, in a terrible mess today, Vietnam, Indonesia and India. And I had a really deep conversation with him about that. And I had this sort of light bulb moment again. I said to him, Richard, you're doing all this amazing work. Why don't we do this in Australia? Why aren't we doing it for school kids in Australia? Why aren't they learning the mindset of entrepreneurship when they're in high school, when they're figuring out what the next stage of their world is going to be? And I look in hindsight and think if there was something like that when I went to school, maybe my whole course would have changed. Who knows? So we got together and formed a business called Startup.Business, and we co-wrote and developed a pedagogy of learning in action. So the students, it's in curriculum in schools across Australia, and the kids are learning by doing, not learning by reading and remembering and regurgitating. So it becomes more fun. It changes their mindset. And at the end of that program, which is a one-term program, they have a business concept that is linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So not only are they looking at developing a business concept to fix a problem in their own communities, and often we're working in regional and rural and remote communities and in agricultural schools, but they're linking that to an SDG, and then we're getting local mentors from business involved with helping them propel that idea. Now, the outcome of that, of course, is this is like a big 360 circle where I've come right back to meeting those schoolgirls and them talking about entrepreneurship. And this was a way to remedy that problem. Now I had a solution that I could deliver and train teachers how to deliver it inside the classroom, not just as an online, which we do now as well. And that program we've now had accredited. So when the student finishes the program, they can get a micro credential with a college if they go on to study a Cert 4 in business. So not only is it a change of mindset, but they've also got a credential if they want to use that for further studying. And the great thing is that this is our next generation of leaders. These are our next generation of entrepreneurs and thinkers and change makers and politicians. And having that mindset, navigating the fourth industrial revolution, they need all of these new skills. They need critical thinking. They need collaborative skills. They need to understand critical problem solving. And so that's what entrepreneurship does. So taking those minds, those new minds into the corporate world or having them start their own businesses, there's going to be an impact for society. So going back to why I started that business, obviously seeing those young women and what they were saying to me, but I was at a point in my life where I was ready to do something more. I really needed to use my heart and my head in tangent and not just my head for business. And I had to do something that is not just a passion, but a purpose, and that was like, I woke up every day thinking, oh my God, I love what I'm doing. And, Jack Cowan, who is the founder of Hungry Jack's in Australia, famously said, if you can't tell the difference between work and fun, then you're probably in the right place. And that's where I'm at.
I mean, Jo, it's an absolutely incredible story. How many businesses and individuals that you will have impacted along the way, 3 books written. It's just, there's so much in that I'd love to dive into and explore. But one of the things two things that really became very clear to me as you were talking was, one, it seems as though you really back yourself, or the impression that I have is that there's some confidence to take on some of these things that you see. And that secondly, when you do see an opportunity, you really seize it. And I'm so curious about whether you believe, A, that is true, or those things are true in you, and also where that's come from and how you have nurtured that within yourself, or strengthened that muscle within yourself.
There's two parts to that question, Beck. I think the first part is my self-esteem and self-confidence really grew throughout the success of my first business. And that was by having someone like my mentor and investor always in my corner. So when things went terribly wrong, I had someone there to talk to who understood what I was going through, who understood the emotional side of it and the business side of it. So I know that he had a large impact on my self-belief to be able to do anything I wanted. But just in general, I've got a high level of self-confidence in general, and that's because I believe I'm equal to everybody else. You know, there's no hierarchy in life. I like to be treated a certain way, and it's the way I like to treat people. And I think that this is going to be philosophical, but when you recognize your own journey for what it is and what you want in your journey, there's a lot of white noise that happens around that. And I tend to really focus on what's important in my journey. You know, who are my important people? What matters to me? What values do I uphold on a daily basis and demonstrate as a role model? And I think when you find that groove, it becomes really easy, because I know in life bad things are going to happen. So I guess when they happen, I'm not surprised. I know they're going to happen, and I've already pre-worked on myself about how am I going to deal with that? How do I deal with that journey, that part of my journey in my life? And I suppose that brings me great peace, but it also gives me a sense of knowing who I am, really, really internally who I am. And then the other part of it is, you know, seeing opportunities and seizing opportunities. There's two types of thinking. You have a growth mindset or you don't. I know people that have had a fixed mindset their entire lives and will not change. So they're the inside the box people, and we need the inside the box people, but I don't have a box. So my thinking is, if I see something that's wrong, I go, oh, right, how can I fix that? What do I need to do to fix that? What things do I need to think about to fix that? And then on a larger scale, it's about, well, how do I make money from fixing someone else's problem that they can't fix themselves? And I think that's how an entrepreneur thinks, like not looking at the problem and thinking, oh, I'll walk past the problem, but looking at it and going, wow, how would I fix that? And then working out whether it's commercial or not.
It's funny because as you were saying that was very much the impression that I was getting along the way, that it was like, imagining that you've spotted something on the road as you're walking past. Anybody else might walk straight past, but you sort of do a double take and look at it and see, and then get sort of roll up your sleeves and get stuck in. But there was something else that you said, and as you were describing it, you said it's very calming, and your whole energy was incredibly serene, and it was about knowing yourself and about understanding what matters to you and about your values and about your purpose, which you had mentioned before as well. So if you don't mind sharing, what does that mean? What does matter to you? What do you value?
I want a high quality life full of wonderful experiences. Now, I didn't take a traditional pathway, and I never got married. I didn't have the 2 kids. I didn't have the 2 cars, the in-ground swimming pool, and the white picket fence. You know, that was just not my style. And I've lived a very fluid life where I've not made choices based on what society expects. I make choices, and the way I like to live is based on the style of living that I like. And I think from a financial perspective as well, I've been after a lot of hard years of work as well, but I'm fortunate enough to craft and create the life I want. And that doesn't have to look like anybody else's. It looks like mine. Wrapped up in that though, I have a very strong work ethic, and that came from my parents. And I have very strong moral fibre, which also came from my parents and my family. And I was lucky enough to grow up in a family that was quite big. So I grew up with a lot of love, a lot of kindness, a lot of simplicity. We didn't have very much. We had to work for what we had. So all of those things that were nurtured into me as a child make me peaceful today as well. But at the same time, the values that I keep now is, when it comes to purpose, I want to change the lives of people I'll never meet, which is something you can't measure. And that is just an amazing legacy to have in life.
Oh, it's incredible. I feel a bit tearful actually as you're talking about that. It is incredibly powerful. And I heard you on another in another article talking about your life mantras being give without remembering and receive without forgetting, which I think there's such a strong yearning to create this impact, as you say, even beyond the stories that you will hear back yourself. So it's so far reaching and it's so powerful what you're describing as I'm hearing it. What is it? Because you've totally energized as you're talking about this. I feel it. What is it about this that's so energizing for you or lights you up?
It's so rewarding personally, but if you look at gender equality and you look at the economic security of women, we are so far behind. We have got so much work to do. So to be able to pull together a community of 60,000 people across Australia, which is made up of our ambassadors, mentees, mentors, clients, community members of men and women. So just remembering we're not a women's organisation at Rare Birds. It's an organisation that supports women, and that support comes from all diversity. So from day one, I brought men into this story, all gender, into this journey, because I didn't want to go to any more women-only events. I didn't want to sit in a room full of women and talk in a drum. And it doesn't change the landscape unless you have everybody involved with the conversation. Funnily enough, when I went to the press the first time to launch, they wanted it to be another women's organisation. I said, that's not what we are. And I have the most incredible men in this community. So collectively, building out a purpose that matters, that people can really deeply relate to in their own right. So now the social structure has changed. Women can work their entire lives now. Women can choose not to have children. Men can be staying at home looking after babies. So if we get more women working into leadership positions to change gender equity in executive board and chair positions, and women become more financially secure, who doesn't win from that? Everybody wins. Now, I'll give you a really interesting stat. In the developed Western world of business, women reinvest 90 cents of every dollar of profit back into their families and communities. So education, health and well-being of their own people, of their own tribe. Men reinvest 40 cents in the dollar. So if you have more women participating in the workforce at senior decision-making levels who are running their own businesses independently, if you tap into the wealth that creates, the GDP will change. The reliance on our social system changes. Not so many women are going to be subject to domestic violence. They're going to have a way out of bad relationships. They're not going to finish with no superannuation in their pocket when they get to 65, or when they are divorced and have 3 children and they've got no wealth and their wealth is tied up. So I'm so passionate about women becoming independently financially secure because no one loses.
Yeah, exactly. No one loses. It's a win-win. And also the passion for it does seem to sort of just pour out of you. And you're right. It is about a holistic lifting up of the community. I mean, Melinda Gates talks about, how you lift up women, you lift up humanity. There's so much research on this. And yet again, here you are spotting an opportunity and doing something about it in a really meaningful and tangible way. And so your impact, and you talked about the importance of your impact, the importance of your legacy, the importance of that network effect, that community effect. And it's very, very clear in this conversation that that's being had, and people are noticing. I mean, you've mentioned a few awards, but recently the Young President Organization Global Impact Honoree Award winner. I mean, what does that kind of recognition mean, or how does that impact you? What does that mean to you?
I think going back to my early years at Job Capital, we're on the BRW fast list all the time, new Startup.Business. Like, we're on all these lists. And it was really exciting back then. Like, seriously, I loved all that stuff. And the team loved it. It gave us good vibe. It gave us good media and publicity. I got to a point in my career where the awards didn't matter anymore. It's a lovely recognition, but it didn't mean anything to me. And I've had time enough to sit in it now and think, this is actually really special to be recognised in YPO, which is the creme de la creme of business people, the best CEOs in the world, the best serial entrepreneurs in the world, the 1%ers of the 1%ers. And to be recognised within that, it was deeply humbling, very, very humbling. And I thought there was almost like a bit of a moment, a short moment where I thought, I really am making a difference here. I really am doing something quite special. And that made me really humble, to think, well, somebody else at that level is recognizing this and the work that I'm doing, then, it's a huge responsibility. But also it was just this little quiet moment that I had was like, I'm actually making a difference. I am.
Well, this is actually what I was just about to say is I find it refreshing to hear it when people say, and you were modest, you were very humble about it. I just took a little moment to think, well, maybe there is an impact here. But I think it's a really, really important thing for, yes, entrepreneurs, definitely. I do a lot of work with entrepreneurs, but also especially females, female entrepreneurs, but women in general, to just take a moment to actually stop and say, I'm proud. I'm really proud of what I've been able to do. And that's important. That is a really important thing to do. And so I know you do work with, you're a mentor yourself, and obviously you're running this very large mentorship kind of program for women. What then would be some of your learnings that you would want women to hear then? What are some of the ways that you would speak to a woman that was experiencing some self-doubt, that hadn't come to this place where they feel confident and are able to trust themselves? Because that's what I hear from you. It's like this inner trust and confidence, I can get through that. What would you say? What would be your advice?
The thing I'd first say to that woman is stop comparing yourself to other people and compare yourself only to the person you were yesterday. And how are you going to improve that today? The second thing I would say is self-doubt generally comes from low self-esteem. So choose the people, surround yourself with 5 people that have a really positive and joyful outlook on life, because you are the sum of the people that you hang around. Don't hang around people that are negative and that want to tell you how to do things and bring you down. The third thing I would say is listen to the experience of other people, not their advice. People are very quick to give advice, but advice doesn't work unless you're in a technical firm. But the experiences of other people will share with you how they overcame their own hardships and what strategies they use to do that. And then I think the last thing I would say is, and this is a really important one, choose the right partner. Be with the right person that is going to have your back and support your dreams and your career and your goals as much as they support their own, as much as you can support them. Because I've seen that inequity in relationships, and unless you have that person in your corner, it's really hard, really hard.
I love that that's where we finished, because I feel as though so strongly there's been a pull through of this, of course, of your own strength and courage and resilience and kind of that ability to back yourself and seize those opportunities, and at the same time woven in all the way through of the power of community, the importance of network, the importance of people in your tribe, in your sphere, and the impact that can make. And it makes sense to me, given the businesses that you're running, and the purpose and vision that you've articulated. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I think that there'll be a lot of learnings in this. I definitely have taken some notes myself. I'd recommend that our listeners do the same. I'll tell them that up front. But I want to thank you for being this role model, for sharing your story, and also for the work that you're continuing to do to really spread your impact. And undoubtedly, I have no doubt that legacy that you're looking to build will surely, if not has already been fulfilled.
Thank you so much, because it's lovely talking to you, and hopefully I'll get to meet you in person if I get to Singapore before you come back.
That would be a real treat. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of Not Just Anything for Women Who Want It Whole. If you enjoyed our discussion, be sure to subscribe to our weekly podcast and leave us a review. Otherwise, thank you so much for being here with us, and we look forward to having you join again. And remember, be brave, be whole, be you.